Hi, everybody. Welcome to another amazing show here to support humanity moving forward in a positive way on Zeta Global Radio. I am your host, Lainey Savante Wolkin, coming to you from beautiful Florida. And tonight, I just found out that our special guest, Nathan Crane, is also coming from Florida. So I'm excited for this show. The show actually has been in planning for in the works, and I was hoping this show would be sooner, but it's actually perfect timing. For those who know us on a personal end in our tribe, we just lost one of our tribal girlfriends to cancer this Sunday, this week. So this hits home quite a bit what we're talking about. And I think when you hear what Nathan has to share, and in terms of all the incredible leaders and thoughtful contributors to his film, I hope you walk away this evening with so much more wisdom and inspiration, not only if you're challenged by cancer or with anything in life, because this film really made an impact for me. I see a lot of films, but there were some incredible takeaways, and I'm going to let Nathan share all about it. So thank you for being here, or for, I know a lot of you like to watch this later at your own leisure, but welcome to the show, Nathan Crane.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm touched and honored that you really got a lot out of the film. I hear that a lot from people who watch it that leave feeling inspired or hopeful or have a new sense of possibility in their lives. And that was really the intention with the film, was to help people understand that there's no such thing as false hope, that there are many solutions. And for people who are looking for alternative solutions or some of the most effective non-toxic solutions, for cancer treatment and cancer prevention, they can watch the film and learn from world-leading experts, cancer survivors, what I call cancer conquerors, people who have, reverse stage 4 cancers, who were sent home to die. So there's nothing we can do more for you. And yet here they are 8 years later, sharing their story of how they reversed stage 4 cancer using many of the things we can talk about, diet and lifestyle, nutrition, and many of these factors that we know cause cancer, and the things that we can do to actually help not only prevent a diagnosis in the first place, but reverse it. So I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed the film, and I hope
I love the
everybody
film.
tuning in gets a chance to see it, because it was certainly a labor of love. It took 5 years to finish for a number of different reasons, and really glad that I was able to get it done and get it out to the world. And it's won 20 awards since it's been out. People have really, it's really touched a lot of people's hearts. It's been seen by many tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands now. And it's, I just am hopeful that it can reach people who need it the most.
You said that so eloquently. I know you've said this 1,000 times, several times a week. So what I'd like to do, if we can, for those of you who know our show and our history of the show, we interview filmmakers, artists, celebrities, musicians, and emerging leaders and established leaders. Right? We've had Deepak Chopra on. In fact, we've had the majority of the people that were in your show, that were in your film on. We've had Dr. Bruce Lipton on Zeta. We've had Greg Braden, Master Mingtong Gu. And it was really, it just, every time you had somebody on there, I was like, oh yeah, because we've talked about all these things. So just a little background. I have a food science background, food science and dietitian, and co-wrote a food healing oracle deck. So I come from the perspective of nutrition and feeding the body temple. And, people always ask you what your why is. And so I thought maybe we can just start with going from the beginning of, were you an avid filmmaker, or were you an avid health nut, or maybe just a background to share about how your world aligned and how you moved into sharing your stories and the stories of those who you've profiled on the big screen?
Sure. So, I grew up in a small town in Montana, between Bozeman and Belgrade, Montana. And what's interesting is I look back at my childhood and I realized that I was always interested in filmmaking to some degree. I mean, I would borrow my mom's huge handy cam with the big tapes, and I would film myself and my friends, skateboarding, and go back and watch it. And I don't know if anybody watching ever saw the show Jackass, but we were doing Jackass on camera before it ever came
Oh yeah.
out in the public. And my mom found those tapes years later, and it freaked her out because we were doing crazy stuff. I mean, lighting ourselves on fire with snowboards, jumping off the roofs onto trampolines. And she found the tapes and freaked out and threw them away. But, I was already moved out of the house and grown up, and we were lucky to be alive from all of that. But I was filming a lot of those things just for fun. I just had this kind of, I don't know, intuitive desire to capture things on camera. I never
Yeah.
really did anything with it. I never studied it formally. I didn't touch cameras for years after that. I actually ended up going through a really rough childhood. I ended up addicted to drugs and alcohol. I ended up homeless at 15. I ended up,
Wow.
really struggling with my health, having a lot of health challenges, digestive issues, loss of weight, very, very skinny, pale, white, very sickly, on antibiotics a lot,
Wow.
sick all the time. I had all kinds of every year there was multiple things that I was dealing with, and poor diet, sad American diet, lots of processed food, lots of meat and dairy, and then add to it, the drugs and alcohol and the stress and the fear and the homelessness and the in and out of jail and all of that, stress and emotional trauma compacted. I was really lucky to make it to 18 years old. I mean, really, really,
Wow.
really lucky.
It's intense.
Yeah, it was intense, and I had some wonderful people in my life. I mean, my mom did the best that she could with what she had. My dad was going through all of his own problems and challenges, so we were, I would see him once in a while, but he was dealing with his own kind of life challenges, and I ended up living with my best friend's family for a while, who were really spiritual people, very healthy, ate vegetarian, meditated, listened to classical music. And I just loved that. I absorbed it. Like, I think I was 17, 18 years old. And I would just sit and ask questions and talk about meditation and Buddhism
Yeah.
and health and these kinds of things. And then I'd go out and party and get in trouble and do all that. But then I'd come back and nourish my soul with, this beautiful information from Dennis and Martina Davis. And they really helped, I think, create that spark within me. And
Yeah. The awakening.
yeah, I had this kind of vision at 18 years old. It was a vision of myself actually in the future, and it gave me hope. And my best friend Gabe Davis at the time said, "Hey, I got to get out of here. I'm moving to California. I'm leaving next week." I was like, "Wait for me. I need to get out of here too. Let's go." And we left maybe like a month after that, and we basically drove down to California with nothing, with no money. Ran out of gas in Oceanside, California, and that's really where I started my life over. And that was 18 years old. That was 2005, and I got really seriously interested in what it meant to be healthy. I knew what it was like to be unhealthy, to be sick, to be dying, to be stressed, to be anxious, to be, very the opposite end of that extreme, certainly headed towards a cancer diagnosis. And I wanted to know what it would be like to actually be healthy and energetic and vital and vibrant and have, happiness in my heart, which I didn't have a lot of as a teenager. And so I started meditating a lot, and I started going to the gym. I quit smoking cigarettes and reduced alcohol to the point, eventually, it took me years, but eventually to the point quitting alcohol completely, switching
Yeah.
completely to a plant-based diet, all organic, doing cleanses and detoxes and research, started interviewing tons of experts. And I was probably about 7 years into this my own kind of personal health and healing journey. And I was being asked to teach and speak, and I was, really enjoying that, helping others with the information I was learning for myself. And I was playing a lot with video at the time. So I actually joined kind of a spiritual mentor of mine at the time. He had started like an advertising company. And I didn't know anything about really advertising and marketing other than I've been an entrepreneur most of my life growing up, both in a good way and a bad way. I mean, I would open the garage and do garage sales when my parents were at work and make a little extra money that way. They come back home and be like, "Where's this? Where's that? Where's that? Oh, I sold it. What are you talking about?" And then I was selling other things growing up that were not very healthy. But I've always been kind of an entrepreneur. And so I joined him in this advertising company. I just dove into like video editing and working with businesses and helping them with video. I realized video had this really powerful capacity to tell
Yeah.
stories, to share emotion, to help transform, people's experiences in a positive way. So we used it in a positive way to help businesses to help, impact their customers in a positive way. And later, and I actually kind of entered this film competition with like no experience and no real camera equipment. It was just a silly thing. My spiritual mentor at the time, him and I did together. It was like this silly skit. We were like pretending to be fish out in the ocean, and it was like an environmental thing. We're trying to raise awareness around the impact that we have on the environment as human beings. And because I've had an interest in sustainability for a long time as well, because sustainability and health are so interconnected. Physical health as well as planetary health are so interconnected. You know,
Can I flash? Can I move us up the timeline? Because I'm so anxious to get to talk about the film, and I have so many things that I wanted to point out. But I just wanted you to, if we can jump to that, because I know that the people I told about this film were um, so motivated to be here tonight to hear what we and all the people that you share in the film wanted to say. So if we're good with that, can we jump?
absolutely. Yeah. So
Okay.
long story short, 7 years down this personal journey, my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer. And when I went to visit him in Arizona and saw how much he was suffering from the chemotherapy and radiation, he was in so much pain. I remember him telling me it was just so painful to walk to the bathroom. And sitting there, not knowing anything about cancer, not knowing how to help him, what to say, knowing there had to be better solutions, watching him suffer and so much pain and feeling helpless and hopeless. He shortly passed away after that in 2013. And that just sent me on this mission to learn everything I could about cancer. So I started interviewing hundreds of experts and doctors and cancer survivors and doing tons of research. I started producing conferences and summits and magazines. And after a few years, started the work on this film. And I've really been dedicated and focused on that for almost a decade now, really helping reach millions of people now with empowering information, evidence-based information about cancer, what it is, what causes it, and what we can actually do about it. Because once you understand what cancer is and what causes it, you can be so much more empowered to prevent it and help your body heal from it. The problem is we don't really understand cancer as a society. We think cancer is this invading enemy that attacks us, right? You got cancer, right? My grandpa got cancer. My so and so, got cancer. It's almost a subconscious programming that's something we catch, when really it's something that's from within. We make cancer in the body. We make cancer every single day in the body. I do, you do, everybody tuning in has cancer cells right now inside your body. Cancer cells replicate. They duplicate every 90 days. So if you add that up, if your cancer is proliferating out of control, it's not even diagnosable generally for about 8 to 10 years when it's created billions of cells. So you have one cell turns to 2, turns to 4, to 8, to 16. In about 8 to 10 years, it'll be about 4 billion cells in your body if it's replicating out of control. But we have this beautiful thing called the immune system, right? And the immune system, its whole job is to identify cancer cells, go out and target them, destroy them, and then remove them. And that's a big part of our lymphatic system. It gets rid of these cells. It cleanses our bodies and removes abnormal cells. And so what one of the experts in my film says, look, there is a cure for cancer, and it's called the immune system. And so when you have a fully functioning immune system, you don't have to worry about a cancer diagnosis. It's really so much in common with what we're seeing right now with this pandemic and who's really affected by it, right? And it's generally people who have one or more chronic diseases, who have a weakened immune system. You catch whatever this virus is, and it basically, unfortunately, takes people out. And if we're focusing on how to enhance our immune system, how to keep ourselves healthy at any age, then we don't have to live in so much fear, because that's what cancer is. It's really a takeover on your body a proliferation out of control because of chronic cell fermentation due to DNA damage that leads to cancer cells just growing throughout the body. And when your immune system knows how to find them, how to target them, how to destroy them, and how to remove them, you don't have much to worry about.
Well, thank you for that. And by the way, if people have any questions, be sure and put them in the comments. We would love to have Nathan address them. I'd like to talk about some of the people who were in the film, because you had doctors in there, you had spiritual leaders, as I mentioned before, Dr. Bruce Lipton, who studies epigenetics, talks about the consciousness within ourselves, how to harmonize ourselves, and so much of what we can do to shift physiology is in mindset and understanding that we have a lot of that control. I think that's really important. I think that everybody that was in there, Greg Braden, everyone had so many great things to say, and particularly in the fact that it's the immune systems and how important, like you said, the lymphatic system, the adrenals, our adrenals, and the emotional, mental components, and that whole talk about removing the fears, removing all these mindsets and harmonizing. I just thought maybe we could touch on that a little bit. And yes, we will get to the nutrition point for sure. But let's talk about some of these other things that people don't take into account that have been maybe stacking in them for a long time now. And there are ways to, if you know that, a lot of things you shared in the film, we can address those right now. Choose to be happy.
Yeah, and it's I talk to people about this all the time. I have a brand new documentary series coming out on just exactly this topic, because it's what I call the missing link of cancer. We can focus on nutrition and diet, a lot of these lifestyle aspects, and removing toxins. These things are really important if you have a cancer diagnosis, and we should talk about them, and we can share some evidence-based things you can do at home and to really help your body. But what I find most common in cancer patients who seem to be doing everything right, but the cancer either comes back with a vengeance, or it just keeps growing out of control until they do this one thing, and that is getting the mental emotional side of their health not only under control, but fully healed. Right? We all deal with childhood adverse events. We all deal with stress in our life, and stressors, and fear, and anxiety, and some form of depression. We all deal with these kinds of emotional experiences. And as Bruce Lipton, who you mentioned, who's a good friend and colleague of mine, I've worked with for years, he's in our film, and he gives a really great scientific layout of literally how our beliefs can either cause cancer or how they can help your body to heal from cancer. That's the power of beliefs. He's got a great book, The Biology of Belief. Anybody who's read it, I encourage that people do read it. And really, in the film, we go into the science of how the biology of belief specifically relates to cancer cells in your body and what you can do about it. There's a whole new, form of science that's come out more recently too, that talks about neuropeptides and why these traumas and these experiences in life, right? Whether it was being raped as a child, or molested, or it was neglect or abuse, or you lived in a family, in a home where you had addiction in the family, or trauma, or divorce, any of these kinds of experiences.
The list goes on and
The list
on.
goes on. It leads to childhood adverse events. And the massive study that was done by Kaiser Permanente in the 90s that came out and said, look, the more of these adverse events you had, the more likely you are to have all kinds of diseases as you age, including heart disease and cancer, as well as leading, if you had 3 or more of these adverse events in your life as a childhood, which many of us have, including myself, you even have 20 years taken off of your life, right? But it doesn't have to be that way, because we can go in and do this healing work, which I've done and many others have done, and really recognizing that emotions and beliefs and our thinking play a massive role on our biology. Literally, what we think manifests in our body as either biology that expresses itself in longevity and health and healing, or biology expresses itself in disease and devastation. And how it works is because of our thinking and our beliefs and our emotions, it changes the chemical composition of our blood. And that basically determines what's going to happen in the body. You're going to have inflammation. We know chronic inflammation is one of the underlying causes of cancer. We cover that a lot in the film. Dr. Sunil Pai, who talks a lot about these core causes of cancer that we understand. One of them being chronic inflammation. So if you're stressed out all the time, you're worried, you're afraid, you turn on the news and you're constantly in that fight or flight, that sympathetic nervous system state, what's going to happen is you're going to literally suppress your immune system. And this is covered in depth in the film, where when your sympathetic nervous system is kicked on, that's your fight or flight, right? That's basically your kind of survival mechanism. When that's turned on, your immune system is literally downregulated. It means it can't function the way it's supposed to. And you don't have, once that's happened, it's like an automatic switch, and it's for survival, right? You want all of your blood and your energy and your focus to go to your limbs, to your body for fight or flight, or freeze also, which is part of that. And vice versa. When you're parasympathetic, so para meaning above or beyond, right? Parasympathetic nervous system is kicked on. What happens is your body is in a state of homeostasis, and the immune system is turned on. So now the energy in your body, the focus goes to your immune system. It says, all right, let's go up, let's clean up those dead cells, let's get rid of those abnormal cells, let's prevent them from becoming cancer cells, let's go out and find them and target them. And so we do that through, one, becoming aware of these traumas, these adverse events, these negative beliefs that are sabotaging us, right? Become aware of them. And there are many ways to do that. Meditation, Qigong. We have Master Ming Gu in the film, who's a dear friend of mine and colleague.
He's wonderful.
Wonderful Qigong master teacher. I spent years studying with him and working with him actually in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Yeah.
And he teaches a powerful ancient Eastern practice, which is all about how to release these traumas from your body energetically, because from traditional Chinese medicine, these traumas store as energy in the body. Well, we know now in Western medicine, these are neuropeptides. So these neuropeptides get stored in different organs or different parts of your body, and they will stay there creating chronic inflammation until we release them. And that's why anybody tuning in who's ever done any real deep mental emotional work, like one time I did a really powerful forgiveness process with my mother, because I had held a lot of blame and guilt and resentment. And when I realized I needed to forgive, when I did, I literally heard this massive explosion on the phone, and I felt this weight off my shoulders. People tuning in, I think, can relate with this weight released off my shoulder, and then just tears, right? Tears, because that's how powerful forgiveness is. And there's a lot of science of forgiveness. This isn't just
radical forgiveness, like a warm rush of a release.
Absolutely. And so it's these kinds of practices that release these cancer causing traumas and neuropeptides and experiences from our body. And it's one of the most important things that most people forget about when we talk about cancer. They, oh yeah, that hippy dippy spiritual stuff, I'll deal with that later. I got to get my supplements. Well, look, supplements might move the needle 1%, 2%, 3%. But if your immune system's downregulated, it's not working right like it should be, because you got this underlying stress, this underlying fear, these underlying traumas that are literally downregulating your immune system. How much do you think that supplement's really going to help you, versus you get to that root cause and you help heal from a root cause level? Imagine how much that can make.
That's why
20%, 50%, 80%, right? I really think, and people who watch the film will be really surprised and I think impressed and also empowered to maybe come to their own conclusion, as I did, that I really believe healing is 80% mental, emotional, spiritual, and it's 20% physical. That's my theory, and that's what I've come to from doing all this work and learning from all these experts. But I encourage everyone else to kind of come to their own understanding of that.
Sure. In my work, and my partner and I wrote, as I told you, this food healing oracle deck. We focus on EMPS wellness, emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual, and how food goes well beyond the physical. That's one part of what food's doing. And what food is also doing is also affecting us emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And all those pieces are so important to what exactly we're talking about today. So not only is it the mindset, but it's like eating with consciousness, eating with intention, eating with the knowing that this food is creating antioxidants in the body, reducing inflammation, opening up, more nitric acid oxide, doing things that to better our body. And that's why that with that is such a winning combination, that people need to awaken to that part that is so important, that was so stressed in the film as well, that uh, the mindset coupled with the physical, but the food itself also touches on all these other bodies, the emotional, mental, and spiritual. Don't you
Absolutely.
agree? Yeah.
Yeah,
So are
100%.
you, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that when we start to look at what does health really mean, what does health mean? What I've come to an understanding is that I look at health through a very holistic lens, right? Very often in the Western approach, we look at things very myopically. It's like we break it down to the littlest component, the littlest nutrient, the smallest kind of divided, separated thing that we can, and then
Yeah.
say, that's what causes health, right? That one little nutrient. Oh, but that nutrient over there, we're going to call that an anti-nutrient because we extrapolated that out from the source itself. And that's so because that one thing is an anti-nutrient, don't eat the whole plant. Actually, throw that out with the bathwater, right? Like, oh, but this makes the whole plant good for you, or the whole this good for you, whatever, because it's got that one single nutrient. Well, what about the thousands, literally thousands of other phytonutrients, chemicals, plant chemicals, antioxidants, these other kinds of things in the plants that make that plant work its magic synergistically. So when we look at, let's take your common soap, for example. And in that soap, if you look at the ingredients and you read, oh, it's got sodium lauryl sulfate, and it's got benzene, and it's got fragrance, and it's got yellow number 5 and green dye number 6, right?
Propylene glycol.
Yeah, and
Propylene.
you look right, and you look at that, and it's got, okay. Well, they say in studies, we take one of those chemicals in that tiny amount, and we do some animal testing and things like that, and human testing, and in that small amount by itself, one time, it's non-toxic. You'll be okay. Your body can get rid of it, right? But what they don't do the studies on, because they know that if they did, this stuff would be banned forever. As it gets banned, hundreds of chemicals get banned all the time, more in Europe than the United States. There's way more chemicals allowed in our soap and food and body care products than are in Europe, for example. They're a little smarter over there with the toxins for whatever reason. But they know that if you look at all of those ingredients laid out together, right, and then you put them on your skin or in your toothpaste and your mouthwash, on your lotion, you're putting on your body every single day, pounds of this stuff every year. What's happening antagonistically, synergistically, when all of those chemicals are getting absorbed into your body every single day, right? One chemical is an endocrine disruptor, and that endocrine disruptor literally is causing hormone problems, and it's causing inflammation in the body. It's causing DNA damage, and DNA damage causes cancer, right? So yeah, one little tiny, I put that on my skin one time, nothing's going to happen. I put it on my skin with 12 other chemicals every single day for 30 years. No wonder we have this explosion of cancer, right? No wonder people are more stressed out than ever before, using more chemicals than ever before. I mean, like we covered in the film in 1905, it was believed there's only 0.05% of people that actually had cancer, right? And then in 1950, that was about
Yeah.
10%. But today, we're almost at 50% of people. That's crazy. In 100 years, we've gone from less than 1% to almost 50%. And what is that? Look at our lifestyle. Look at our diet. Look at the chemicals we allow. Look at the stress that people are under, the higher rates of depression and suicide, more drugs on top of drugs on top of drugs. No wonder cancer's through the roof, right? So the other side of that is, okay, well, let's look at kale, or let's look at an apple, for example. And how many nutrients are in there? How many minerals? How many vitamins? How many antioxidants, right? How many phytonutrients, amino acids, fiber that feeds the microflora in your gut in just one little apple or piece of kale? and you eat that, and imagine the positive synergistic effect that that has on your body, on your microbiome, on reducing inflammation, on, fighting cancer. So we take the two opposite extremes. Okay, all of these things that we know can cause or can lead to cancer, and you're putting on and in your body and in your mind every day. And on the other hand, here, all of these wonderful plants, lots of anti-cancer benefits proven in many research from mushrooms and all kinds of plants and berries and healthy legumes, these kinds of things that have all these anti-cancer properties. What do you think is going to happen when you get rid of all these chemicals and stress and toxins and add in all these anti-cancer foods and nutrients and lifestyle approaches like we cover in the film? What's going to happen? Well, what happens to a lot of people is they get better. They
Yeah.
feel better, they get better. Even if they don't reverse their cancer completely, they might add 2 years, 5 years, 10 years to their life. But more importantly, the quality of life gets better. They have more energy, more vitality. They feel better, have a deeper sense of purpose and meaning in their life. So, the reason the film is called The Integrative Perspective is because I wanted to look at an integrative approach to cancer and take the
Mhm.
best of all worlds. So if there's stuff,
That was good.
if there's stuff that's working in the conventional world, Western medicine, if there are things that are working that are, low to no toxic, that are actually getting people results, then we want to know about it, want to let people know about it. If there's stuff that's working from 5,000-year-old ancient traditional Chinese medicine, well, let's learn about it. Let's see what's working there, right? And what does the evidence say about it? What does the 5,000 years of history say about it? If there are things that are working in diet and in lifestyle and in beliefs and all these things. So looking at it from a very integrative or holistic approach, which is why I called it the integrative perspective, is to say, look, through this lens of integrative medicine, what does that allow us to do as human beings to hopefully help put an end to one of the worst pandemics we've ever seen? And this is a lifestyle metabolically related disease that is primarily preventable. Primarily preventable. Cancer.gov even says that cancer is only 5 to 7% hereditary. And when you get into genetics and epigenetic studies and
Yeah.
training, and you learn from Bruce Lipton in our film, you come to realize that upwards of 99% of cancer is actually potentially preventable. So why are 10 million people dying every year around the world from cancer? 10 million. I mean, this every year for year after year after year, those numbers keep going up and up and up. And this is a primary, we're talking hundreds of millions of people. You think the pandemic we have right now is bad. It's not even a drop in the bucket compared to what we're dealing with cancer. And this is preventable with lifestyle and diet and nutrition and beliefs and everything that we cover in the film. So it's important stuff that I think once people learn can be so much more empowered for their health.
Absolutely. And I found it shocking, and it was stated in the film, mentioning how chemotherapy, I mean, some conventional works and some, when they did the studies, that they're, how the effective rates, weren't as as valuable as we thought, essentially. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a study. I mean, they'll watch the film and show, but there was just, it's hard to fathom when you think about it, because people go that route directly thinking that's the way that my doctor said this is how it's to be. That's why it was refreshing that you had doctors on there who were both conventional, both non-conventional, and felt when it was appropriate, and when it wasn't.
Exactly. There are forms of conventional medicine that work, right? One of them is low dose chemotherapy. It's called IPT, insulin potentiated therapy, and sometimes a little bit of low dose chemo can help knock the tumor down a little bit while they're working on the root cause. So addressing the diet, the underlying, stress and trauma and
Right.
chronic
Inflammation.
inflammation. Well, get that tumor down a little bit because it's pressing against the spine, or it's causing a lot of pain, or it's metastasized to the bones. And there are a lot of cancers that chemotherapy just doesn't work for at all. And yet that is, I mean, 0%, literally 0%. Some cancers, testicular cancer, has about a 50% success rate with chemotherapy. But the largest, in the film, the study you're talking about, the largest study that's ever been done on chemotherapy was Australia and the United States. It was 160,000 people. And they looked at how effective chemotherapy was across extending 5-year survival rates. And they found across 22 adult malignancies, so the 22 top cancers out there, what was the success rate? And the success rate was less than 2.5%. So we're talking over a 97.5% failure rate with one of the, if not the most prescribed oncological cancer treatments today, right? That's chemotherapy. And then you add on radiation, which also destroys the immune system. You have surgery, a part of that. I mean, our three main conventional cancer treatments today are drugs, chemotherapy, radiation, surgery. Unfortunately, these oncologists today are not trained in nutrition. They have 4 hours of nutritional training in all of their school. And it's mostly, and I know this because I interview them and I ask them these questions. And, I go to I talk to the students who are in school and say, how much nutritional training have you had? On average, it's 4 hours. Some get up to 8 hours. And they're learning about things that have already been cured, like vitamin C for scurvy and these kinds of things that aren't relative really to our lifestyle today. So you have to, these doctors who were trained conventionally, who are in our film, and they realized that they weren't actually helping their patients. They weren't able to truly help heal the root cause with the tools that they were given. That's where they had to go out and find their own path. And they had to go study functional medicine and nutritional medicine and start to study some of these ancient medicines and start to study lifestyle medicine and holistic medicine, so that then they could bring that back and actually start saving their patients' lives, get to the root cause of what's causing cancer and really all diseases, because the similarities are uncanny. How similar the causes for cancer are, that are for autoimmune disease, that are for heart disease, that are for Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative disease. It's uncanny how common the causes are. But you address
Wow.
these underlying causes and you start to see people get better. Not every time. I mean, some people, the cancer is just too far along, and that's an unfortunate reality. But in many, many cases, you can start to see people get better. And these doctors that I've worked with for years, and a lot of my events, and who are in this documentary, for example, they have so many, I mean, thousands of case studies of patients getting better by addressing these underlying causes of cancer without all the harmful side effects of the conventional treatments of chemotherapy and radiation. So I was talking earlier on that we kind of have this subconscious programming, right? That cancer is this really scary thing. We lose our hair, we get sick, we got IVs, we're in the hospital, we got all this pain. And the reality is, for most people, that's not cancer. That's not the cancer. That's the conventional treatment. Your hair doesn't fall out because of the cancer. Your hair falls out because of the chemotherapy or the radiation, right? You're not in pain most of the time because of the cancer. You're in pain most of the time because of the treatments. You're not sick or have gut problems or digestive issues most of the time because of the cancer. You have that because you've destroyed your microbiome with the chemotherapy. We also know, and this is this is very clear, clearly scientifically factual, is that radiation and chemotherapy actually doesn't kill cancer stem cells. The cancer stem cells are what we need to be focusing on. They are the cells that actually the cancer, it will create new cancer tumor cells, for example. That's where the cells duplicate and replicate from, as the cancer stem cells. So we can knock the cancer out of the body so you can't see it. On a PET scan or CAT scan or an MRI, for example, we can knock the tumors down and all of that. But you don't get to the root cause of the cancer stem cells, or the root cause that caused the cancer in the first place. And that's why it very often comes back with a vengeance. I'll interview somebody who, and Dr. Veronique Desagnier is a great example, who's in our film, who was diagnosed early on with an early stage cancer. And then it came back later with a vengeance. Same with Elaine Gibson. Early stage cancer, and then it came back stage 4. And what she did all these things we talk about in the film and completely reversed her stage 4 cancer, right? Diet, lifestyle, nutrition, meditation, really working on this holistic approach, this really integrative approach. And she ended up even taking one kind of it was a conventional, almost like a drug or a hormone type of therapy. It was like one little pill she took for a short while, in combination with all of the things that she was doing, and her stage 4 cancer went away, which is like, okay, great. That worked, right? That integrative approach works. So let's share that with people. Had she not done all the other underlying things, would she have gotten better? And the answer is no, because just by taking one little pill, most people never get better. And we see that across the board. So we have to address the underlying cause. So I'm not saying everybody stay away from chemotherapy or radiation or surgery or whatever. I'm saying figure out what is a success rate with the treatment that you're given, right?
But
Ask
you're saying that she did all these things, did all the integrative approach, but still didn't address the initial cells, or it worked or
exactly.
it didn't
So
work? Okay.
yeah, exactly. So the cancer went away, but she was stressed out, and I asked her. I said, "So what do you think really was the cause that made it come back?" I was too stressed out. I was overworked. So what you really start doing? Well, I started meditating an hour every day, every morning and every night. And you think that's what it was? Well, yeah, that's what I think it was, because once I got rid of the stress, it was like my body could heal, right? My body could heal, but I was still doing all the other things: green juicing and cleaning the air in my home and cleaning, clean water, getting the toxins out of the water and the food, all these other kinds of things. But getting to that root cause, and that root cause for her was stress. And the root cause for a lot of people that I find out is actually stress. These other things, I think, definitely play a factor. And scientifically, it's shown that they play a factor, these other toxins and chemicals. But I'll tell you what, every single person I talk to and I say, what do you really think caused this? And so often they say, I had this trauma. In my new documentary series, actually, this woman talks about this, that her ex-husband killed himself, and she blamed herself for that and held on to that. And then she was diagnosed with cancer not too long after that. And that's actually, in studies that have been done, one of the very common personality traits of people diagnosed with cancer: holding on to past trauma from, self-blame from something that happened previously, whether a divorce, loss of a loved one, a child, suicide, these kinds of things. It's a common personality trait they find across the board with many cancer patients. And she said, once I changed my diet and all these other things, but once I really started to heal emotionally, I feel that was the biggest change for me. And not only did my cancer go away, but I'm a totally different, better, happier, fulfilled person. Right. And so I think that's one of the big takeaways from the film is, look, you can do all these things right, and you can really go aggressive towards whatever treatment you go towards. But if you don't become a better person because of it, if you don't improve the quality of your life because of it, if you don't become at least a little bit happier or more content and peaceful, a little bit more fulfilled, or find some passion or purpose in your life, then what's the point? What's
So
the
true.
point? Right?
Honestly, your film, I walked away and I said, if there's anything I could just break it down into the simplest form, it is don't sweat the small stuff. Like when you look at the totality of everything, look at just the value of what you love, what brings you joy, what brings harmony to the body, and stay in that vibration, because everything else is so irrelevant. That he said this and they did this and that he should, like, just let it all go. I don't want to forget, Joanna's asking, this is a question, and she's two things. One, she wants to know about how to watch the film. The second question she's asking is, what place does cannabis have in treating cancer in your wonderful background in acumen?
Yeah, so where to watch the film, theintegrativeperspective.com. The website has all the links if you want the DVDs. Also, it's on Amazon as a DVD. So it's Cancer, the Integrative Perspective, or theintegrativeperspective.com. And cannabis. So cannabis is really interesting. So we don't go into a lot of detail about cannabis in this particular film, but I have seen quite a bit of research on it over the years. And there's been a lot of good work, other films that have covered cannabis and cancer and health, which is one of the reasons we didn't go a lot into it in the film, is there's been a lot of great work done around cannabis already. And, cannabis has a lot of healing potential for everything. I mean, from, depression and suicide, anxiety, to helping reduce inflammation, to, helping with neurodegenerative disease. But just like anything, like any kind of plant medicine out there, really strong, I'd say, psychological impacting plant medicines, it can be overused and certainly abused. I turned to plant medicine early on in my childhood, I think, because there was something about, cannabis that drew me to help deal with a lot of the mental, emotional traumas that I was going through. right?
Sure.
It made me feel good. It
Yeah.
made me forget about it. It made me feel happy and all these things. But I certainly abused it. I got dependent on it, and it became a part of my everyday life. And so since I just don't use it anymore. I don't need it. I find better, at least. So I'm talking mentally, emotionally. So for some people, mentally, emotionally, it can be incredibly beneficial. It's certainly in small doses. Certainly under, I would say, controlled environments where you're not going to run away into an addiction with it. So each person has to determine who they are and how it's going to work for them. I actually experimented. So I stopped smoking for years, and then I experimented with it as like, kind of like with psilocybin, for example. So psilocybin, with mushrooms can be incredibly powerful. They're doing some great research on it with PTSD with soldiers in San Diego,
Yes.
the Navy,
Yes.
for example, helping heal PTSD. And it helped me as a teenager actually to get out of all of that, homelessness and addiction and all of that. And that's a story for another time. But I experimented a couple of times with cannabis in the same way of setting, holding it in my hand, kind of praying, putting my intentions, and then actually eating it instead of smoking it, and like really praying and setting my mind and meditating with it. And I had really deep, profound, spiritually awakening, mentally, emotionally healing experiences with that. And when I did it that way, instead of just a casual recreational kind of thing, I had these big aha moments. And so I think if we use it as it's really meant, what I believe meant to be used, why it's here on the planet, is to help us experience that next level of our spiritual and mental emotional perception, and use it in that sacred way. There's a lot of benefit to it, and there's a lot of benefit to it as a healing plant biologically as well. I mean, it's shown to reduce inflammation. We have an endocannabinoid system within the body. We have the receptors for CBD and THC, and so they actually help to help our immune system, enhance our immune system, go out and find and destroy cancer cells. If you don't want the effects of the THC, I take CBD with no
Oh,
THC,
yeah.
right? And
Love it.
CBD has a lot of research on CBD for helping with inflammation and helping enhance the immune system, helping experience deeper sleep. I take just CBD at night before bed because I find that I get into
I do too.
really deep sleep with it, right?
Every night.
So, I think there's a place for it. And I think
Yeah.
each person needs to discover what that place is. There's a lot of research that is backing it up. And certainly it can be overused and overabused, but it also can certainly be a wonderful medicine.
Hmm. I know people who, dabble in the peyote, dabble in the ayahuasca. I mean, there's all sorts of plant medicines when they're on their journey. I wanted Denise is saying here, I just want to see the takeaway is to expand layering your wellness in EMPS, emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual. Yeah, I think I think that's what the film is about, is finding all these integrated perspectives and approaches, and to I think it's to peel back the layers and to find those methods that speak to you to get to those core roots. You mentioned forgiveness. I think that's the core. To me, that's the whole story right there, is forgiveness. And where can you go? Let it go. It just doesn't play a role in our lives anymore. And it's not about just saying I forgive. It's feeling the forgiveness. It's not that just I'm thinking it. It's like when people say I'm going to just repeat these affirmations. You got to feel it. You can't just say it as just perfunctory. You got to really dig in deep in order to get that, like you said, the body to release that garbage from the system, don't you think?
Yeah, it's like the old saying that, blaming somebody or resenting somebody or judging somebody or holding on to guilt or shame towards somebody else in any way, it's like eating a poison apple and expecting that person to die, right?
Yes.
Us ourselves holding on to that judgment, that blame, that shame, that guilt in any way, we're not doing anything to that person. We're actually poisoning ourselves. And now, biologically and scientifically, we understand that we are literally poisoning ourselves by holding on to those judgments. And a lot of times we don't realize we're holding on to them. So it takes deep reflection. It takes meditation practices or qigong practices. It takes some of these deep mind body practices to really discover some of these things that we're holding on to that we're not even aware of. There's a great Byron Katie. I'm sure you're familiar with her. She has a great system called the work. I was doing the work one day, and I just out of I was like, hey, I'm going to do the work again. I've done it a number of times. It's powerful, a really powerful system of mental emotional healing, of forgiveness, of letting go, of reconciling. And I just did it just out of the blue, and all of a sudden this flashback memory came up, and it was like, okay, there's something I'm still holding on to. I need to let go of. I need to heal. I need to forgive, that I didn't even know I was holding on to from being a teenager. So I went through the work on that experience, and it was boom again. It's like peeling that onion back, just like you said, another layer was
Yeah.
released, and you become lighter as a human being. You elevate to, what I say, a higher level of your spiritual potential. It's like the more guilt and shame and blame and judgment we can let go, every layer that we let go of, we vibrate at a little higher potential. And that vibration lifts us up to a life where we feel much more fulfilled and much happier, no matter what's going on. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have challenges and situations and fears and anxieties. It just means that those things aren't going to impact you as much. They're not going to stress you out as much. They're not going to hold you down. It's, the more we practice this way, I do Qigong every day, a few minutes every morning, and I do it multiple times throughout the day.
Wow.
Forgiveness practices, Ho'oponopono, I practice all the time.
Good for
Gratitude
you.
practice every morning, every night. I've embodied many of these things that
Yeah.
I practice over the years into my life. What I think people will take away from the film is all of these things have to become a lifestyle. It's not like,
Oh,
oh, I'm going to
yeah.
change my diet or change my thinking or behave differently until my cancer's gone. No, it becomes a lifestyle, something you do every day, because after a while, rather than being a chore, it becomes something you look forward to, because it's making you better in every way. It's making me a better father for my children, better husband for my wife, better son for my parents, a better leader for my community, right? And so the more I do these things, I remember, okay, it's helping me become better in all these ways. So I'll continue to do this as a part of my lifestyle versus something I need to do or have to do because I want to heal this thing that I'm dealing with. And I think that's the beauty of it.
Bravo. Bravo. Question for you. And for those of you who are watching this and realizing, okay, I got to make some changes in my lifestyle, changes in my stress level, changes in my approach, things that I've been hanging on, I need to peel the onions and all that. When we do these new, hopefully, by watching the film and the conversation we've had tonight, is this instant changes to the physiology of our blood and our system, or are these things that take a while once we start to work it? Like someone says, well, okay, I'm doing all these things. Am I suddenly, my body's healed, or is it something that can take months? Or is there even, has it been, do we even know?
Yeah, so it's a great question. There's some great research in that field. Dr. Joe Dispenza has done some great research in that field, where literally you can see the chemical changes in the blood very quickly. I mean, within hours. Um,
Wow.
and Master Ming Tong, who's in the film, they did some studies with the sound healing with Parkinson's patients, and they literally with the sound healing practices, which is an ancient qigong meditative practice, they Parkinson's patients have a really hard time with dopamine levels, and you have to take lots of drugs to increase dopamine, and the drugs don't do very well. And the drugs don't even get their dopamine levels up to a solid baseline anymore. And just with sound healing in a short period of time, they're able to see the dopamine levels increase to not only baseline, but above baseline, better than drugs do. And this is just an ancient practice. And so, dopamine is one of those healing chemicals, right? It activates a whole cascade, a downstream cascade of healing effects. And that's why going to the gym and working out, once you get into a routine where you're moving your body, you're getting energy, what's happening is your body's releasing these neurochemicals that say, hey, this is good for us, so do more of it. That's why you leave feeling a little bit better than when you got there. That's why the runner's high. You run a few
Yeah.
miles and you get into a meditative state and you start to feel kind of blissed out. Not that first mile or two. I'll tell you, when I was training for my first ultra marathon, it was hard to get to that second or third mile. But once I did, I get into a meditation and I'd just be blissed out for 5, 6, 7 miles.
As
And
long as you balance your cortisol levels, because there's always that, that's a
so
big issue
the
too.
cortisol, so the cortisol is from the stress, right? So cortisol is an important hormone in the body. So it's an anti-inflammatory hormone. It has a whole bunch of processes in the body that are absolutely essential for health. We think of cortisol as this really enemy kind of antagonistic hormone, but it's not. Actually, we need cortisol when we wake up. So one of the little kind of tricks here is when you wake up, go out and look at the sun for the first half hour of the morning. Get that sunshine, because what you're doing is now you're down regulating your melatonin from your sleep, which you need to do, and you need your cortisol to raise in the morning to start to waken up your body, wake up your brain, wake up a whole host of chemical reactions in the body. Now, throughout the day, the cortisol levels will drop down to a healthy level. But you turn on the news, boom, cortisol's up, right? You get anxious on the road, someone cuts you off, you get pissed off, and you're holding on to that anger, cortisol's up again. You're at work and you get a bad, your boss comes and says something mean to you, and now you're holding on to that for 2 or 3 hours, right? Cortisol's up. You listen to the radio and some terrible thing happened, or new pandemic, whatever, cortisol's up. So you go
Or
home.
you work out over more anaerobically and not aerobically, you've gone over your threshold. That's a big.
You can, but there's a certain level there of where, anaerobic and aerobic. So that's a huge, deep conversation we can talk about another time.
Another time.
But basically, if you're a cancer patient and you have anything stage 1 or above, you definitely want to be more in that aerobic light exercise zone for sure. Not getting into the high intensity training too often, not over pushing your body too often. Somebody who's healthy, actually hitting that anaerobic for short periods of time is incredibly healthy. It activates hormesis in your body. It's a healthy stressor. So we have these stressors that are negative stressors that cause inflammation and high levels of cortisol and too much adrenaline and too much epinephrine, and then the body has a hard time recovering. Versus you go do it, you're healthy, you do kind of a hit high intensity interval training, you get hormesis, which is healthy level stress. So why does sauna work so good? An infrared sauna for cancer is fantastic. But if you have a stage 4 cancer, you don't want to be sitting in a sauna for 30, 40 minutes a day, because what's happening is that healthy stress, too much of it turns to unhealthy stress. And rather than fighting the cancer, now it's just fighting to try and repair the damaged tissue. So there's a fine balance you have to find depending on where you're at with your health, your life, your personal capacity. Most people have a hard time just getting up off the couch and going for a walk around the block. So if that's where you're at in your life, the best thing to do is wake up every morning, do a little meditation, read, drink some tea, get the sunrise if you can, get some of that sunshine to get your cortisol balanced, and then go for a walk. Get your body moving in a healthy, light way. And as you get stronger and fitter and healthier over time, you can start to dabble with some of these other healthy stressors, hormesis on the body, which can actually increase healing faster, right? That's why all this ice bath that I've been doing for well over a decade, before Wim Hof became so famous with his wonderful work that he does. And I mean, people have been doing this for thousands of years. I mean, in Russia, this is a big part of people's lives who live in the forest. They wake up every morning, go dip in the frozen river to start their day. They knew there was something beneficial there. Well, why does that help so much? Because that puts your body under a certain level of stress, and your body has to adapt and respond to that stress to get stronger and healthier. So you create, like in a sauna, you create heat shock proteins. Those heat shock proteins actually help over time make your body healthier and reduce inflammation, increase telomere length. A lot of these healthy stressors activate your gene expression, the genes that are associated with long life, with healthy long life, and with telomere increase. So, I've actually taught a 9-module masterclass on all this, because there's so much here
Unbelievable. You need
that
to
it's
come
like
back.
we can talk about all this for hours and hours and hours. But coming
Listen,
back,
Denise wanted to say to you, so much valuable wellness info. Love the term cancer conqueror. We'll be watching the movie, and thank you.
awesome, Denise, thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
we have just about a minute left. Any last thoughts you want to share with the audience? There'll be this goes everywhere, and lots of people watch it later. So anything you want to share?
Yeah, I'd say,
Final thoughts.
I think it's Dr. Francisco Contreras in my film who has said it best, says there's no such thing as false hope. You'll have an oncologist tell a family member, don't give them false hope. They only have 3 months left to live. They gave them a death sentence. You have 3 months left to live. That's your death sentence. That's your prognosis. And the people who live past what I call their fake expiration date are most often the people who never accepted that prognosis. Said, no, I am not accepting that. I'm going to do whatever I can to beat this, to fight, to overcome it, to get healthier and stronger, to live longer. And as Dr. Contreras says, look, there's no such thing as false hope, because that prognosis is not matter of fact. That is, as Dr. Bruce Lipton says in the film, your genes do not have to be your destiny. That prognosis does not have to be your destiny. Just because you have cancer genes running in your family doesn't mean that you're going to have cancer, right? The 50% of the women with the BRCA1 gene never get cancer. So just because you have the gene doesn't mean you're ever going to get cancer. And if you change the environment in which the cells live in your body and the way that you think and you eat and live, you can reduce that cancer risk exponentially. So wherever you're at in your own life, whether it's I have cancer in my family and I'm concerned, I'm diagnosed with stage 1 or stage 4 end stage cancer, or I'm trying to help a loved one with cancer, there is always hope. There are always things you can do. There are solutions. We cover a lot of that in the film, and beyond even just, I encourage everyone, go watch the film, but beyond that, keep educating yourself. Keep sharing it with as many people as you can, because the more people that learn about this, the more we can save lives. And I think that's what is most touching and humbling for me, is to hear from people, from 10 years ago who said, I watched this thing you did, or listened to your summit, or went to your conference, and it changed my life. I got my life back, I got my health back. And those stories are so beautiful to hear, because those are people that never gave up, and they kept searching until they found the answer for them.
Thank you. Last year I interviewed Dr. Gabriel Cousins on the show, and what an icon he is. And to have this conversation with you, like the future generation moving forward with the wisdom that you're bringing, is such a blessing for the planet. So thank you for all you're
Mm.
doing. And I look just forward to watching whatever you're going to bring out to the world. You got a fan in me for sure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, and
Sure.
thanks for having me here. It's an honor. Thank you.
Hold on 1 second. Everybody, thank you again for being here. Keep an eye on our Zeta Continuum YouTube channel, as well as our Zeta Global Radio website and Facebook page for more wonderful interviews, iconic interviews to make this world a better place. Take care. God bless.